What's going on, traders? How we doing out there? Yes, I know that you guys might be excited like I am. We're going to get into DMYI right behind me, IonQ, quantum computing. I mean, we're talking some advanced stuff here today. Definitely. We'll get into some headlines. I saw some CCIV news out there, so definitely stay tuned, guys. Smash the like button, and welcome to the SPACs Attack. What's going on, my SPACs fans? Definitely. You guys know where you guys are at. Benzinga, hit the like button. Let's hit the subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And let's go ahead and bring on my man, Katje.
What's going on, brother? Yeah, I mean, if you're not subscribed, I guess the big question is, why not? Because Benzinga YouTube is the place to be. We got content running all day long, including SPACs Attack.
I'm super excited, man. We're going to get into great interviews. We got to get into their revenue projections. Crew Cut already giving us questions.
That's we already got questions flowing. We got comments flowing, about IonQ first mover, a $1 trillion industry. I mean, yeah, this thing is massive, guys. We're super excited for that interview today. Not a lot going on out there, Mitch, for headlines, and no deals announced today. But I do have some headlines we can get into before we take a look at CCIV and some of those other names on the watch list. What do you think?
Well, like always, man, go ahead. Take me back, Chris.
All right. As I said, not a ton to get to for headlines. But up first, we have Hyzon Motors, HYZN, recently de-SPACed, a leader in in hydrogen fuel cell powered commercial vehicles. They announced a new onboard hydrogen storage system. So again, Hyzon's made some news recently, really powering that hydrogen platform that they have developed, lowering the cost for commercial vehicles using hydrogen power. So continues to be on watch list here, HYZN. In our deal yesterday, XPDI shares ended the day up 1.3%. Again, nice to see some of these deals getting at least a 1% jump on that first day. And then lots of, calendar items to mention. Yesterday, among the mergers that were approved, we had THCB, which will trade as MVST. I am long shares there. VCVC approved will trade as REE. And CMLF merger approved will trade as SMFR. We also got some new vote dates set. So our August calendar starting to fill in nicely. August, we're going to have lots of deals. And also, as I mentioned yesterday, we're going to have lots of de-SPACs reporting quarterly earnings. So August could be a big month for SPACs out there. Merger vote date set. We have CFAC for August 12th. SAII also August 12th. And Rocket Lab with VACQ on August 20th. Rocket Lab had a nice tweet out yesterday thanking a NASA administrator for stopping by the Rocket Lab headquarters in Long Beach, saying, "We are so excited to launch the capstone mission to the moon for NASA later this year." So, one of the big things for investors this year, is finding stocks that can go to the moon, finding cryptocurrencies that can go to the moon. Here you have Rocket Lab, VACQ right now, a company that is literally going to the moon later this year as part of a deal with NASA. So definitely keep an eye out on that one. I love the space story there, and they will have that merger vote in August. And then we'll get to CCIV here after headlines, but we also had a rumor announced the other day, DGNS. So this is Dragoneer Growth Opportunities Corp 2. They are rumored to be bringing Cvent public. This is an event management company. That deal reported by the Wall Street Journal on that rumor. The thing I want to dive into is that a report out from Bloomberg now says that Zoom Video Communications, is in talks to acquire 10% of Cvent as part of the PIPE financing. Now, we've seen lots of publicly traded companies, like including Palantir, invest in the pipes of these SPAC deals. This is the first time, though, I've seen Zoom pop up, and a 10% stake is a pretty sizable move. So Cvent went private in 2016 for $1.65 billion, now valued at around $5 billion. They already have integration with Zoom. They list Zoom on their website, saying that you can use both companies to manage your events with virtual meeting and webinars managed by the companies. So Cvent focused 100% on live in-person events prior to the pandemic. But then they, Smart made the shift to virtual events as well. So virtual event revenue, $100 million out of their $500 million annual total, according to Bloomberg. Zoom pushing further into live events. They announced Zoom events yesterday, to host and manage virtual events. So I really like this move here. If this deal goes through and Zoom gets a piece of the company, I think Cvent could be one to watch. Let's face it. As we move forward, we're going to see hybrid. We're going to see some live events and also virtual events. So I think Cvent is one of those companies along, with Zoom that could definitely further the growth in that industry. That's what I've got for headlines. Let's go ahead, Mitch. Let's dive in to CCIV. I know, people want to talk about that one. So the news out today was that 97% of the votes that were cast were in favor of approving the business combination, but they did not get enough votes yet to push the deal through. So it looks like they are holding a special meeting on Friday. Is that what you're seeing out there as well?
Yes, that's exactly what we got. And so there was also a meeting today at 11:30. So in just about 22 minutes, they're going to have a meeting. So definitely stay tuned for that. I know the CEO and different kind of members are meeting up on that right now. And I can tell you right now, CCIV is getting crushed right now, guys. It just started heading down. I had to even tell Chris in the middle of that. It just started taking a really hard downturn. I think this is exactly around the time that the news came out. So really what this to me meant was, and I had the question even on Twitter this morning, I was wondering, did they struggle to get votes?
Yeah, so here's a couple issues I see with this one, Mitch, and you had that number out, right? That 97% of the votes that were cast were in favor. The problem is they're not getting enough people voting. So unlike some of these other SPACs, I mean, remember, CCIV was one of the largest SPACs out there, right? With over $1 billion. You have over 150 million shares, a lot of shareholders that need to vote because they need 50% to pass this through. And unfortunately, they're not getting the vote. The other thing is that with these merger votes, if you're a shareholder before a certain date, even if you sell your shares, you're still allowed to vote. So a lot of people in the past 2 weeks, right, Mitch, have probably, some people have sold out of CCIV, right? I saw a lot of people flipping from CCIV to GGPI, the Polestar rumor. So those people, even though they sold their shares, they're still considered shareholders by the vote date. And I don't think they're going to vote. I mean, they don't own the shares anymore, right? So they don't care if they vote or not. So this one could see some pressure because they might have to extend this vote deadline because it looks like just not enough people voting.
Hey, we'll definitely see it on that, but definitely it took a hit there right now. We'll see around 11:30, see how this rebounds, see if they go ahead and kind of boost up the investors' confidence in that meeting. We'll see what happens. I mean, honestly, what it seemed to me is that there was one perspective of that vote that wasn't being voted through. And so that's why they're holding that special meeting. They're pushing it back. They're going to go ahead and probably talk about this at that 11:30. I'm going to probably check it out after we're down here on SPACs Attack, and then we'll definitely get something out on that. But let's go ahead, Chris. Let's get out of this. Let's get out of CCIV Motors, out of the lucid dream. Let's get back to some reality and maybe a little bit of looking forward, right? You know, one of the things that I've always loved to do is look at stories. And one of the things that I always look at is what can come next, because what could come next is usually what we're going to go ahead as investors and look forward to, so that we can go ahead and be in front of trends, not behind them, not lagging. And so let's go ahead. Let's get into our interview today, Chris, where we go ahead and like always, guys, we want to unlock some SPACs. So let's go ahead and do just that.
All right, guys. Yeah, super excited for today's interview. We already had Niccolo De Masi on, the CEO of DMYI Technology, to share a little bit on this deal. But now we get the other side of the story. Joining us on SPACs Attack today, we have Peter Chapman. He's the CEO of IonQ, that company going public with DMYI Technology Group 3. That ticker is DMYI. Peter, welcome to SPACs Attack.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here today.
Of course, like always, welcome to the show. Like I said before, I'm definitely calling this more of a generational play. The reason why I call that is that at the end of the day, I always try to stay in front of the trends. I think if any trend we're moving towards is, I still remember the days when I used to use the dial-up. So I think we're definitely moved forward from that. So looking forward to hearing this interview. And I'm going to let Chris ask some questions, and I'll be back with some of my own.
Sounds good.
Perfect. So, Peter, as I said, we had Niccolo De Masi on previously. He talked about this deal. Now we have you on to share the flip side here. So we asked him, of course, why did he partner with IonQ? So the flip side of that is, why did IonQ decide to go public via SPAC, and what maybe drew you into DMYI Technology Group?
Well, let me address the first one. DMYI was because we were looking for a partner who came out of the technology sector, right? There's lots of people are doing SPACs in many different areas, but we wanted somebody that actually had a technical background. So Niccolo has a degree in physics, and that's pretty close to what we're doing. And Harry, between Harry and Niccolo, they have decades of tech experience. So building quantum computers is technically very challenging. So we needed partners who could understand what it is we're doing. And then in terms of why us, do this now, well, there's a number of reasons. One is building, new generations of quantum computers requires, frankly, just quite a bit of money. And so the question is, do you do it via SPAC or you do it through private rounds? We decided that this made more sense for us just to get it one and done, be done with kind of the raising money for the next several years. And rather than go through probably what would have been multiple rounds. It also gives us an opportunity. We compete against kind of some of the world's largest countries and tech companies. And going public is kind of, as when you're trying to hire the best of the best, kind of options are one thing. People don't know really how to value those things, but RSUs, they do. So, it gives us an advantage in hiring as well.
Perfect. So, one of the things that jumps out, from the presentation on IonQ is there's some big names invested in this company. We've got Google, Amazon, Samsung, Lockheed Martin, Hewlett Packard, Airbus. What kind of validation is that for your company to get these large companies to really buy into the growth of quantum computing down the road?
Well, I think it for every one of these companies, they're clearly believers in quantum. Each one of these companies either has a need directly for a quantum computer or believes that this is going to be the future of the computer industry. So, now we know that not only the world's largest countries are competing to be the leader in quantum, but the largest tech companies as well. So, as you say, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, IBM, these are both partners and investors in IonQ. So that's a pretty good indicator that they think we have something here.
Awesome. So, you have a mission statement out to build the world's best quantum computers to solve the world's most complex problems, transforming business, society, and the planet for the better. Can you break down to viewers, what exactly that means and who IonQ really is?
Yeah, so we kind of think of our today's computers as being all powerful. We've gotten used to these kind of laptops and computers where it's kind of, to be honest, it's hard to get excited about next year's processor because it's pretty damn good now. But there's a set of business problems and grand challenges that today's computers just will never ever be able to solve. And so we need another kind of computing device to be able to solve these. And these are some of the most important things for humanity. And so that's really what quantum computers are all about, is a new kind of computing device that would unlock this potential. And it kind of, in the last 50 years, classical computing has driven, the stock market and all of our lives. Quantum is likely to drive it for the next 50 years. It's a bunch of, a quantum computer can unlock kind of how Mother Nature works that we can't really peer into with today's classical computers. So I'll give you a fairly simple example of this is photosynthesis. We can't model that today in a classical computer, but it is believed with 90 good enough qubits that we could model what plants do and how they convert sunlight into energy. Plants know how to convert that energy at about a 95% efficiency rating, but today's best solar cells can only do it in the 20 to 23% range. So if you could model it and kind of unlock those secrets, maybe you could build a better solar panel that suddenly would be, so much more efficient. This is just like one example out of literally thousands, if not millions of applications where you want to understand kind of how the chemistry works, for fertilizer production or cancer or, material science. All those things need a quantum computer to be able to do the simulation so we can know how to actually reverse engineer what Mother Nature actually does.
Wow, yeah, I mean that's a fascinating, idea right there, and as you said, thousands, if not millions, of possibilities with quantum computing. So IonQ is the only, or will be the only public pure play quantum opportunity, according to the presentation. Also, the only one that's available with Amazon and Microsoft. Can you talk a little bit about the pure play and how maybe differ from some competitors out there?
And we just added Google in the last couple of weeks as well. So the only company now on 3 different cloud platforms. So, IonQ is unique in that its hardware is available on the cloud from the 3 largest cloud players. It's also unique in that all the various quantum tools, the only place where it all runs is just IonQ. So whether or not you use a Google's tools or IBM's or Microsoft's or Amazon's, you can use any of those tools and it all runs on top of our hardware. And I think, the reason that we have kind of, what most people would consider our kind of competition, investing in the company, partnering with us, making sure their software works with us, is all as an indication, and only us, is only an indication of kind of where we are in the quantum ecosystem. We're that far ahead.
Awesome. So, in the presentation, we kind of have the growth plan of IonQ broken down into 3 phases. So the company in phase 1 right now, can you just walk us through a little bit of the 3 phases and the timeline for IonQ here?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually, generally, I think what most people think is the 3 maturity phases for quantum. We're in the first phase today. It's called for the technical, it's the NISQ era. It's all about these early quantum computers, which are very noisy. And so the amount of noise you have in the quantum computer then determines how big a program you can run. The smaller the noise, the bigger the program you can run. So what we need to get to is to run a much bigger program so we can simulate things like photosynthesis. And so what's limiting you is the number of qubits and also this noise. It's called fidelity. And so IonQ has the best fidelity in the business. And that allows us to run the largest kind of quantum programs. So in first phase, IonQ is pretty handily winning in that first phase. The next phase is about how do you correct this noise, this error. And then you do that with error correction. It's the same error correction that we're using right now over the internet. It turns out that as you send information over the internet, there's a little bit of noise that comes in over the line. And so how do you correct for that? And so we use error correction. So quantum computers are going to do error correction as well. And IonQ is the only company that has now shown error correction working. And we've done it with a very, very low overhead of about 13 physical qubits, meaning you take 13 of these qubits, which are used for computation, and you kind of put them together to get to a better qubit through error correction. So to be able to get to bigger quantum programs, you need to be able to fix the error, which means you need to go to error correction. And so we're leading now in phase 2 as well. And then in phase 2, we kind of expect that quantum computers will be able to do things that take on the world's largest supercomputers or the cloud itself for certain applications. And then phase 3 is the holy grail of quantum. This is all about, it's called fault-tolerant, quantum computers. This is now having a quantum computer big enough that you can do things that classical computers can only dream about. So this is, the kinds of applications like RSA, breaking RSA. If I was to do that on a classical computer, they say that it would take 300 trillion years to break just the encryption of just one email. But at this phase, you should be able to have a quantum computer that could break, the encryption of one email in a fraction of a second. And that's the difference in power. 300 trillion years with the largest supercomputers, fraction of a second with one of these quantum computers.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for breaking down that timeline, those phases for us. Saw a lot of questions in the chat as well, really talking about the different years here. So earlier this month, we saw Benchmark initiate coverage on DMYI with a price target of $18. We don't always get, this analyst coverage prior to the de-SPAC process. Can you talk a little bit about this? Are more analysts expected to cover the company after the merger? Have you gotten, interest from analysts out there?
Yes, this is, this is a stock and a story that everyone's really interested in. And so, I think both, if you looked at the interest in our pipe raise, it was phenomenal. And if we look at the interest by analysts, they're just really very interested to try to understand kind of the company and what the technology is and all the rest. So probably more so than, your average, kind of scooter company or something. People they really want to dig in and really try to understand this.
Perfect. So you mentioned a little bit before, one of the big news items since this deal was announced was the addition on the Google Cloud Marketplace. Can you just talk a little bit about, that expansion with Google and how, that's great positive news since the SPAC deal was announced?
Yeah. So when we did the original announcement, we had only Amazon and Microsoft. And since then, we've added Google, and we also added software support for IBM's toolkit. And so what that really means is now, no matter which software tool set you use to do your quantum programming, it now all runs on IonQ. And so, today, it really doesn't matter. Everyone has an account at one of the big 3 cloud vendors. And so it also means for us and for customers, it's easy for a customer to get access to our quantum computers. As you likely know, to open up an account as a new third-party vendor often takes months with companies to become an approved vendor. Well, now with the cloud, they already have an existing relationship with one of these 3, tech giants. And so now you can use that existing account and very quickly get access to our quantum computers. So that's very exciting.
And then we also got news recently that IonQ teamed up with SoftBank to expand quantum computing access globally. Can you talk a little bit about this partnership with SoftBank and how it could, really help the company with that global expansion in the future?
Yeah, so the SoftBank partnership will help us in, the Japanese and Asian markets. This is, for some markets, you really need a local partner. My Japanese just is not as good as it used to be. So we were looking for a partner that, could help open that market, and SoftBank made a lot of sense for us. So they've taken a position in the company, and, together we will work on bringing IonQ's quantum computers into Japan and other areas as well.
Awesome. So, I've mentioned, some talk about competition. There are some competitors in the quantum computing space. I know, your technology ahead. You've got all the stats in the presentation. Do you see quantum computing as a winner takes all market? Is there room for multiple players? How will the competition kind of shake out in this, growth market going forward?
It's certainly in classical computing, there's obviously been, multiple players that whether it be NVIDIA or Intel or AMD, there's kind of been space or room, if you will, for multiple players. I think in the next 5 years that we're going to largely have the market to ourselves. The question in competition is much later in the decade, from what we can see. And so in the short term, we don't think of kind of what most people would call as our competitors. We see them more as partners. And so now, Google announced that they were going to have a quantum computer in 2029. So, a commercial quantum computer in 2029. Between now and then, they're our partner. And then we can reevaluate, and I'm sure they will too, in 2029 as to what it means together. But in the short term, we're partners.
Yeah, I love this slide. This is one that we put up, when we had Niccolo on the program as well. People in the chat, too, commenting at how impressive those numbers really are. This slide really shows the future with IonQ. One last question from me here before I turn it over to Mitch. We have a slide that shows kind of the cash position for IonQ. Now, obviously, you said part of the process of going public was because, this isn't cheap by any means. So, the cash is expected to fund IonQ to break even in 2027, may also consider debt facilities to fund additional, platforms. Is this still the case, that this deal can help with IonQ? Is there any talks of having to, raise additional capital down the road?
Not at the, not today. Obviously, we might do things if sales take off that you might have to go out and, build more factories or those kinds of things. But in terms of the technical roadmap and hitting the financial projections, no, we're pretty confident that this is the only money that we need to raise.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump in here. Let's go ahead and let's start talking a little bit about valuation. Let's look at slide 42 here, if anybody's keeping along with us. All right, so one of the things that you can clearly see here, guys, is I'll go ahead and I'll bring it up. I look for gross margins that are sometimes over 35%. We're looking at gross margins here expected in 25 at 88%. So how are you guys expected to get here, Peter?
Today to build a quantum computer costs us, I think, roughly 1.3 million to build a single quantum computer, and you're charging thousands of dollars per hour. And so, the gross margins are pretty damn good. And, today we're building them kind of onesie at a time. And when I start to put them into manufacturing, those costs are going to go down and the usage is going to go up. So I think, today we were doing modeling based on, partial usage of every day. and in the future getting to a point where these things are just, plugged in and running 24/7, 7 days a week, billing time for it. So it's it's a profitable business. This is not something like TVs or something where the margins are razor thin.
Definitely. I mean, compared to, let's say, some of the semi chips and kind of, you got AMD and NVIDIA here, 4766, and that's in 21. Well, I mean, 85. I mean, that's definitely kicking it. I don't even have to mention that. But let's go ahead. Let's get into what I really love to do, is talk about story, right? And so I'm always talking about story here. Let's go to 45. Let's talk about how we could really use this for solar. And really, I mean, at the end of the day, it even states it in here, how solar is really inefficient right now. How can quantum come in here and make it efficient?
Well, it's as I kind of mentioned at the beginning here, plants know how to convert energy in a way that we just today don't understand, and we can't actually model. And so if we could get to 90, what we call algorithmic or useful qubits, you could actually we could actually model the chemical, the chemical reaction that's happening inside a plant and reverse engineer it. And then if we could do that, presumably, then we could build a much more efficient solar cell. And what would it mean to have, solar power, which is, 4x, 5x better than what we have today? If I think the number is like, if we could capture 0.5% of the energy that falls on Earth, then, we could power mankind kind of forever. So, but part of that story is we need to be able to build better solar cells. This is just one example of many where we just don't understand how nature does it today. But with a quantum computer, we could reverse engineer it and then apply it into our industrial processes to make a better product.
Yeah, one of the things that I think about is just how if you can do this with solar. I mean, we're always looking at ways that we can better use our materials and really get that renewable energy. I mean, we're always looking forward. I mean, green energy is definitely somewhere where we have to go into, because I mean, we only have so much fossil fuels. I think quantum definitely in the long run is going to come in here and play a major factor on how society keeps moving.
Oh, I think in particular in climate change, there's probably just, kind of top of mind, maybe 30 different ways you could use a quantum computer. They tell me that the energy grid doesn't have really good optimization software. So like half the energy we produce for electricity doesn't get consumed. And it's because we don't have a powerful enough computer to be able to do the optimization problem. Quantum should be able to do that. If you look at the single most polluting industry on the planet is fertilizer. It accounts for about 1% of all the emissions worldwide. It consumes about 3% of the world's natural gas to produce fertilizer. Turns out little enzymes in soil know how to create the same fertilizer, but without any extra energy. Well, we need apparently about 111 algorithmic qubits to reverse engineer how those enzymes do it. So if we could understand how they do that without a lot of new energy, you could cut back climate emissions 1%. And what is the energy output? 3% of the world's natural gas. I don't know what that is, but is that about the energy output of Kuwait or something? So the economic values for these things are, just astronomical.
Yeah, the use cases, I mean, I'm pretty sure people can even think of use cases right now in the chat, let alone if you go actually and look. One of the ones that really impressed me on the investor presentation was the logistics. We always think about our UPS drivers as just, our drivers making deliveries, but we don't know how complicated their routes really can be. I mean, stated here, it said that, a classical computer would take longer than the age of the universe. And it said that, for one driver, I mean, this would be about 66,000 different routes in one day. So, I mean, Peter, this drives me insane. I couldn't imagine trying to figure this out. I mean, we went from MapQuest to this.
Well, this is one of those funny ones too. We're just talking about here the optimization of one driver. But if we actually did the optimization for like an entire city of like New York, the number of possibilities there would be I haven't done out the math, but I bet you it's like equal to the number of atoms in the universe. And so, if you're going to go at that with a classical computer, it's just you're not going to get to an answer. But clearly, if you're a logistics company trying to deliver, what is the optimal route? What should I give this driver, and what's the route that he should take? Today, we do that with a whole bunch of kind of hacks to try to get to at least some sort of good idea. We've all heard that some companies, like for instance, the algorithm only allows them to turn right at a stop sign because they can't optimize.
Only right turns.
Only do right turns because the software, their classical software isn't powerful enough to consider a left turn, right?
That's too much there. Too much, Peter. Don't confuse us.
I know. So this is the kinds of things quantum computers could be used for. So
definitely. I'm super excited. I'm going to go ahead and bring Chris back on here, but definitely the use cases, I could go on and on. We could talk even EV. I mean, EV is definitely just stepping in, battery usage, just that alone in the future, I think it's definitely going to be a use case. I'm sure you'll be getting some calls pretty soon, Peter, about EV batteries and how you can help them. So it seems super exciting opportunity for me.
Well, not only what can we do to create a new battery, which is one of these chemistry problems, but the other side is these new flying cars. They're going to need they need a new battery too. There's going to be a lot, it's got to be lightweight. So, how are we going to do the designs for those? You need a quantum computer.
Yeah, awesome. That UPS slide, Peter, you said it, and Mitch, I know, that we were talking about that slide before this interview today. That is a great use case study on what quantum computing can do. Peter, we have some questions from the chat here. So, you talked a little bit about the solar opportunity for the company. So a question here from T-Chess saying, will they sell those solar cells? Any comment there?
I don't think that we'll be in the solar business per se, but I do think that what we will be is the licensee of the patents for much of that technology. So I'm sure that will come from others, but I think that the company will also own quite a bit of the IP that gets generated with our computers.
Perfect. And then a question from Stephen Connors saying, how about unlocking the secrets of aging? Any comment there? Is that something we can see in the future with IonQ?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is be able to do simulations to understand how nature works, including obviously chemical interactions within the human body. And so if we had a big enough computer to be able to do that simulation, you could start to, hopefully reverse engineer how aging works. So, I'm personally at my age, I'm particularly interested in that one. So
Peter, the fountain of youth.
It's people believe that quantum computers can be used to find the cure for cancer and Alzheimer's and many of those things. If you solve some of those problems with a quantum computer, in some sense, you're actually getting to the fountain of youth, because if we cured cancer, how much would that add to life extension? So it doesn't have to be as exotic as maybe as you think, which is, some sort of magical elixir. If we just started ticking off all the things that kill us and started removing them, life extension will get longer and longer, right? So, I'll be happy if in the next 10, 20 years, we manage to find a cure for cancer. That will do enough. So.
I could only say, I wish we would have had you 10 years advanced from the moment where you are now and then have gone through the pandemic. I'm pretty sure you would have been there, Peter, trying to help us out.
Oh, without a doubt. It was a little frustrating. We're just a little early right now.
Just a tad bit.
Just a tad bit.
Awesome. Another question here from Okasa saying, can this be used for cybersecurity as well? How can quantum computing play into cybersecurity? I'm sure there's many, many ways, Peter. What's the goal here?
Well, there's kind of two things. I'll give you both the positive and the negative, right? The negative is that one of the known applications for quantum computers is breaking encryption. Matter of fact, it was the early days where people figured out how to break RSA. So if you have a big enough quantum computer, you can break the encryption that is being used by many industries, including the internet. We wrote a paper in the last year also how to break elliptical curve cryptography, which is also the other kind of bedrock of quantum encryption. So that's the bad news. The bad news is you can use a quantum computer to break these things. The good news is that you can also use a quantum computer to make it so that you can't break into these things. And so there's some interesting things about quantum that when you entangle two qubits, whatever you do to one qubit, the other qubit sees. And so you could start to think about how I would build a communications network that actually says, okay, it's just, that's what we do over the internet. We send information from here to here. So, and the thing is, we don't know how that works. We don't know how those two qubits are actually entangled. And since we don't know how it works, there's no way to break it. So it's a very secure channel. So it looks like that, there's using quantum technologies for building a quantum internet is an interesting, kind of place for the future. The thing that I'll just mention is you need to have probably a quantum computer at either end to be able to build a quantum internet. So, that's probably where IonQ enters into that story.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing the good and the bad, Peter, and, being fully transparent here on the show. A question from a couple people in the chat. I don't remember everyone's name, but a lot of people want to know, when will the 32 qubit computer be available to cloud users for Microsoft, Amazon, and Google?
We just put our first 2 customers onto the new system in June. And so we will look to, put a schedule together for when we're going to make it available on the cloud. I think we're also looking at building more of those systems because the demand seems to be pretty high. So we'll have to figure out kind of how quickly can we build more systems to be able to get them out on the cloud.
Awesome. And then another question here that I just thought of because I'm pretty sure when Niccolo was on, he hinted at it. Cryptocurrency, crypto mining, obviously a big market right now. How can quantum computing play into crypto mining in the future?
Well, the more obvious one is how do you break crypto with a quantum computer, right? So that's I guess that's a different kind of mining, but I haven't actually looked into what it would do to use a quantum computer to actually mine crypto. That would be a great application. We haven't spent a lot of time thinking about that, to be honest.
Awesome. Well, maybe Niccolo, spent more time on that area then, and maybe that's one of his plans with IonQ in the future. But yeah, I guess you'll have to talk to Niccolo in that field. But Peter, we got so many positive comments in the chat, talking about how, this company could really help, areas in the future. I know I'm excited to follow this story. We look forward to following the story, maybe having you back on or Niccolo back on in the future. So for everyone out there, again, joining us on SPACs Attack today, Peter Chapman, the CEO of IonQ, that company going public via SPAC, DMYI Technology Group 3. The ticker is DMYI. Peter, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us on SPACs Attack today.
My pleasure. Thanks, gentlemen. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hey, I don't know about you guys, and I heard a comment in the chat that seemed a little bit informational, like we were like being supported by Peter to give him such a good interview. No, the truth is, guys, is that when I think about quantum computing, I get even my mind away from stocks. I don't even think about it like a stock. I start thinking about the story itself, the technology, and where it can go. That's where my mind goes. And then I have to start bringing it back and being like, okay, let's go back and think about the stock itself. Then we can look at the price. And this is why I always say that there's 3 variables to my game. It's technicals, fundamentals, and story. For right now, the story through the roof. I mean, I'll clearly say it. Now, from that moment, we got to go ahead and start looking at the fundamentals and the technicals to then start thinking about the stock itself.
Yeah, and that's the key here, Mitch. As bullish as I am on the future of this company, quantum computing, there is still the fact that they're a couple years away from, meaningful revenue, meaningful, use cases. But I really think, it's a chess game, right? They're putting all those pieces. They've got Microsoft, Amazon, and Google now all partnered. They've got investments from these large companies. I agree completely with what you said, Mitch. If you look at this company aside from stocks, the fountain of youth talk, right? The talk of cancer. I think it goes without saying, myself, you, Mitch, all our viewers have lost a loved one to cancer. Many of us lost loved ones during the COVID pandemic. How could a company like this help the future of preventing, horrible things like that from happening? When you think about that, again, as Mitch said, you go away from the stock. You think as a person. As a person, what can a company like this do for the future? And then you can look at the stock story. I'm more excited about this company as a human, right? And what it can do for the future. So if this read like an infomercial, that's why. It's because, this technology is just so exciting. And that's not to say that, the stock is going to moon, today, tomorrow, or over the next year. This is just talking about the future of quantum computing. Mitch, I'm excited in what this technology can truly accomplish.
Yeah, and when some people try to think about it, you gotta look at it like I hear some comments in the chat, like, when will this really start coming into play? And I think that's something to definitely keep and watch, right? And so one of the things that you need to see is things like that, like the partnership you just saw recently with the cloud, and seeing the use cases actually turn into uses, right? And so watch for that. Just continue to watch that and watch the company progress. One of the things that does get to me is also on the investor presentation is how we've gotten smaller and smaller as we keep going by. And I think that's what's also needed, right? You can't take out a whole room to have a quantum computer at your house. I don't think that's feasible here.
Isn't that how it was years ago when the first computer was ever made? It was massive, right? It took up the size of room. Look at cell phones. How big were cell phones when they first came out, right? That big block phone. So I think you're right, Mitch, that the size there, bringing that technology down will truly help scale, in the future. But hopefully everyone enjoyed this interview. I know a lot of people in the chat, had positive comments. Thank you, guys. And again, if there's a company you want to see on SPAX Attack, please let us know. Mitch, let's turn to the watch list. So there's DMYI, trading right around 994. This is one that really had a nice move up on the deal announcement, but since then has really just traded pretty flat, right around the $10 mark, right? It's gone a little above, a little below. So that's an interesting thing here to keep an eye out on DMYI heading into the merger vote. What do you think?
Sorry about that. I don't know why I knocked myself off the screen there, but DMY technology here. One of the things that I'm going to try to do with this one is these are the type of SPACs that I tried to take out certain baskets, right? In certain baskets, you'll have your hype stocks. Certain baskets, you have your like revenue makers that are kind of just not this, I would say, the sexy stocks. Then you have the future potential stocks that I think that can have revenue, but they're kind of more in that pre-revenue stage that I think the growth is there, the story's there. That's kind of where I'm going to go ahead and put this one. I'm going to think the story's there, the growth is there. You saw those margins. I talk about 35%, 88%. If you know anything about finance, 88%, you're making margins of 88%. You're talking confectionery, you're talking candy like gross margins there. So let's just say it's on the top. And now the next thing will be the technicals. When do we get a good technical breakout? When do we get a good partnership? When do we look for the D-SPAC? That's what I'll be looking for, guys, and we'll be paying attention towards that.
Yeah, you heard him talk about analysts being excited about this company too, right? And they had some big names in on the PIPE investment. So I think maybe they get some analyst coverage right away. with the DSPAC process. So that's something to watch too. So we can pay attention to that, and also as they announce news, right? So they got that Google deal. You heard him say they, had those first 2 computers for their customers. When will we see more computers? Could that be enough to move the stock, in the future? So that's something to pay attention to, with DMYI too. And also, Mitch, we haven't gotten a merger vote date, right? That could be a catalyst. This could be announced. This could end up being a August or September close date, kind of based on when it was announced. So, we could be talking about this one again real soon on a calendar.
Yeah, 100%. Mentioned in the chat, it is future margin, 100%. I mean, that's what we're looking forward towards. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at how the CCIV Dragon is doing here in the chop session today. Definitely getting a little choppy, if we know what I'm talking about. And what did I say? Guys, look out for that 11:30 turnaround, right? There's a meeting there. There's a reason why I brought it up, guys. Look, 11:30, it starts ticking up. There's a reason for that, guys. Like always, you got to stick with the news flow. Stick with the news flow. It's so important, right, Chris?
Yeah, and I mean, I think CCIV is going to get approved, right? Like, I don't think there's any concern that this deal doesn't go through, and you're not going to have people redeeming shares for net asset value. The biggest thing here is, there's so many shareholders. They need to get people to vote. This is another good reminder that if you own shares of a SPAC, do your part. Please vote for the merger. That's part of the process. Many of these have certain percents they have to hit. And if they don't hit them, you risk the deal, being delayed or not going through, which in turn can negatively affect the stock price. So, just keep that in mind, with CCIV moving forward.
Hey, let's go ahead and let's get into another one here. Let's take a look at one that was moving pretty significantly yesterday, and let's take a look at it today. AvePoint, and what are we getting on AvePoint? I mean, man, this was one that went back to $10. Chris, what were we thinking?
Yeah, this was one. When TJ was on the show, I think it was between 10 and 11. I'll have to go back and look. And what did TJ say on the show? He said that they were going to get analyst coverage soon. So, Mitch, the thing I want to point out is not only is AvePoint getting positive analyst coverage on their own, but their big partner, right, Microsoft is getting lots of positive analyst coverage now. Mm-hmm. And those analysts, what are they highlighting about Microsoft? They're highlighting the cloud, right? That's where Microsoft's growth is. How does AvePoint play in? They partner with the cloud, with Microsoft. They help small and medium-sized businesses, accomplish what they want with the cloud, through that Microsoft partnership. So I think AvePoint, you got the double here, right? You got AvePoint getting the positive mention, and then you got Microsoft getting the positive mention. So I think it's worth paying attention to that, and that could translate into, strong earnings from AvePoint in the future.
Definitely. We're going to keep an eye on this one. I think in the long run, it's like you said it, Chris, cloud, just like I think about programmatic advertisement. It's the same thing. It's new game. There's no point in not being on the cloud. If you're not on the cloud, what you do is you just put yourself more susceptible to kind of security risk, more susceptible to losing data. And I can tell you right now, as a person that's lost some data before, you don't want to be that person in your office that says I lost some data. So
wait, when did that happen? I don't remember that.
Oh, you don't remember that time?
I'm kidding.
You don't remember that time?
We all remember when you lost the video. What a exciting day that was here.
Let's just say if I didn't have the cloud, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, that's probably true. I'd be talking to myself right now or to another person. So, but luckily, because of the cloud, I got Mitch here on my show with me.
At least.
We're happy. Mitch, what about Body? B-O-D-Y. I know that's one you called out a couple days ago.
Your body.
We've been talking about this one for months, and this one it went down below 10, right, as part of the D-SPAC, and now it's starting to get some momentum again today. And again, you called this out a couple days ago, I think when it first started turning green there. What do you think of body? I mean, I know I hear people talking about shorts getting burned. I don't know what the short percent is in this. I think it could be more about the story, right? And maybe with the COVID pandemic, we're seeing the shift to at-home workouts again. And maybe that mixed bike, I mean, I know Peloton's been getting some positive mention. That mixed fitness bike could as well.
Yeah, I keep an eye on Peloton because I feel like this move really started with the sympathy that you started seeing coming from Peloton, starting to move on up. And I think really people are starting to finally compare these two companies and looking at it and saying, can Beachbody create that competition to Peloton? Right? Peloton changed their mentality really in the pandemic. They went away from just being a bike and tried to create the mentality that trainers can now just be at your home, right? And then that's the mentality that's changed. Beachbody doing the same, body, right? Pulling that look to where the trainer is essentially kind of like a live action show right there in your home, and you no longer have to go to the gym to get that trainer. That's where the mentality changed. The question is, does that mentality stay? Because I do see some people going back to the gym. I myself has gone back to a Planet Fitness, but I think with this being said, you need to see these kind of people, right? It's a certain type of person that does consistent workouts, right? And so I think you need to start looking around and seeing the society. How are we approaching this? Are we going to be the type of people that just kind of slightly start going away from gyms and we take that personal training experience from home? Or is it just kind of more the pandemic time that's really moving this? Those are the questions you need to ask yourself. I don't always got the answers. I can tell you what my answer is right now, but I mean, it's a guess, right? It's an opinion at this point. And so I think in the long run, you do see body up just because, I mean, one thing, I love the ticker. You guys know how I love my body, but definitely we'll see how this one keeps moving. It could be meme-like, it could get moving, but the one thing that always interests me is subscribers, because that shows up at the bottom line.
Mitch, did you see the news the other day that Peloton partnered with United Healthcare? So United Healthcare, one of the largest health insurance companies in the U.S., they're going to offer 12-month subscription to Peloton for its members. What about that? When we had Carl on, right?
Carl.
But not that Carl, not Carl with K in the chat, Carl with the C, Mr. Beachbody himself. Mm-hmm. He talked about, doing one price, right? A monthly subscription where you would get access, to the bike, the workout videos, the P90X, the Beachbody workouts, the supplement and nutrition business. What if maybe Beachbody was able to partner with an insurance, provider to offer that to their subscribers? Is that something maybe we could see as a future growth item here as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there. I mean, when you think about it, I really like the move in trying to diversify when you're in the gym game, right? One of the things that Beachbody diversifies with is also mixing with nutrition side and the supplement side, and where the margins are at. Let's talk about those supplements, but it's just like candy, man. It gets going, but really, I just want to see these companies, and for Peloton, the same, be in all different areas, because that's what's going to, I think, can continue moving. Because one thing that I always noticed about working out is that we change in our outlook, right? There was a time where you could think of CrossFit and it would be a negative look. Some people had a really negative look towards CrossFit, because what it does is that, I don't want to go into it, but you're either aerobic or anaerobic, and you start battling that. And it's kind of, one of the things is understanding the chemistry of the human and that kind of thing. But what it comes down to is that we adapt and we change, we innovate. So I think as long as they keep innovating, bringing some new things to the table, you heard body, then the My Fitness, I think things like this will continue making these companies move up. Peloton, body, I think it's a new world, and we definitely are taking care of our bodies.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, I think that's going to do it for SPACs Attack today. Again, another exclusive interview on here. DMYI IonQ, exciting quantum computing industry that they are in. Mitch, I know I'm looking forward to tomorrow. We've got a Friday show. Our Friday shows tend to be a little bit more casual, right? I think maybe we've got some merchandise to give away still from Hyliion. I know people have been waiting for that. We've got it. We're ready to go. So join us tomorrow. We've got some merch to give away. Also, I think we should probably do some ticker time tomorrow, Mitch, to reward our loyal viewers on a Friday. What do you think?
Hey, like always, guys, we're going to be rewarding you guys like we always do. Stick around, hang out. We'll have some good stuff for you guys tomorrow. I think we're going to have more of a conversational day. Maybe Chris and I go into some SPAC war. Who knows? Ooh. Give us some ideas. Who would you like to see battle each other? What kind of battle would you like to see? Maybe it's companies like, let's say, RSI, GNOG. Let's try to get them similar. But if you guys got a battle in mind, put it in the comments after the show. That'll definitely help us. Smash that like button. We'll see you guys next time on the SPACs Attack. Up next, you got the Power Hour. Do not miss it. There's some great interviews coming on up, some CEOs. And with that being said, I got to go ahead.